Spread some germs.
We're live.
We're live.
Okay. All right, let me call this meeting of the Facilities and Safety Committee meeting to order. This meeting has been posted by, in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, and is being done virtual pursuant to the governor's orders previously issued this year. So the first item we have on the agenda is the presentation and update of the TRE funded projects from Mr. Tapia.
Thank you, Mr. Powers, members of the committee, Dr. Cavazos, and colleagues. The first item I'm going to cover on the TRE is the Treasure Hills is one of our big projects that we have going on. And we're I'll show you, I'll just go straight to the pictures. One of the issues that we've been having at Treasure Hills was parking. The teachers came back last week 100%, and then we're going to have face-to-face and some hybrid this year, this week, with some of the phasing, and we'll have some more next week and so on. But we've been having a lot of rain, so it really put us behind schedule as far as the parking. So we were able to get a collegiate parking lot. You can see there in the top left corner, over by the new wing, which is about half of the playground area that they have there at Treasure Hills. And all the cars fit, but when all the teachers came back 100%, you can see just to the right of that, we had about 25 cars parking on the non-collegiate area, which is just grass. So we knew we're in a hurry to get the front area finished so that we can move all these cars to the front that are in the grass area, and only the ones that are going to be working on the new wing would park on the collegiate parking lot. So if you can see my cursor back here, that's where that temporary collegiate parking lot is. And up front on Haynes Street, we had this, the old bus drive and parking in front of the cafeteria. And we have about 20 cars that can fit there, and along the tree line there's some more spaces. So we were able to get some of those cars over here, and then we're in a rush to finish the second section so we can get more cars parking here and the buses being able to drive through for the first day. And so over the Thursday and Friday, they did the curb work, they did the collegiate compaction, and Friday evening, they did what they call the oil tack. Got to let it sit for a while so that when you put the asphalt, you get a good bond. And Saturday, they were working and they started laying the asphalt. And they were able to get most of it except for this lane that accesses the parking spaces, but the bus lane was complete. So the buses were able to go through and then come out onto Haynes. So that was very helpful. Monday morning it was ready. They would have finished, but the plant ran out of asphalt. So they were gonna finish it tomorrow. They're gonna finish that last little piece, and we'll be able to access another 23, 24 spaces in front. So that's a big help. So now we have a collegiate parking lot over by the new wing, temporary, and we have the permanent parking here up front and the bus drive. So that's a big help. And then we'll have more kids next week. So that'll service it. This other picture here shows the big parking lot that's under construction. All that underground storm sewer, you can see the pipes here. And even the new section that we did, the drains are being tied into the main system, that then part of it comes out to Treasure Hills Boulevard and the other part goes to Haynes. So all that work is pretty much complete. And then they'll start on all the grade work on the big parking lot. And if we don't have too much rain, I would say in about 5 to 6 weeks, all this will be completed as well. And then we'll have all that additional parking. So it's going good so far. On the inside, on the 4th grade wing, this is where the temporary office is going to be. Just some of the finished work that the principal is going to relocate here, some of the clerical, secretary of staff, assistant principal, counselor, and a nurse's station. And the hallways are cleared out. And any areas that are open to the construction area around the library have been sealed off and closed so that kids will not wander into the construction zone. So we're taking all safety considerations as a high priority for the kids. So it's going well. The next step will be to, let me go back to this picture. As you can see here in the old courtyard by the library is going to be expanded and a new addition All that's been dug out. It's about 4 feet deep, and they'll start bringing in
Looks
fill.
deeper than that.
All this excess dirt will be taken out. And then over here by this little wing here, that's where the permanent administration building will be added. So we still have the building additions will be the next part that they're gonna get started on and hopefully finish out this parking lot. So that's where we are in the Treasure Hills.
Oscar, I'm
project.
just curious go back to that last picture, please. Why are they excavating down where that white truck is? Is that, you said they're going to be digging that out?
Here?
Yes, right in there. Is that going to be
Okay.
the new library?
Yeah, this actually looks like it's a hole in the ground, but it's not. It's actually dirt above the ground.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
There's a truck
Kind
that's
of an
awful
optical
small.
view that you can see it both ways.
Yeah, okay, so that's just
So
piled.
they're removing all this dirt. And you can see this tractor here, this excavator is on top of a pile of dirt that they're getting rid of into trucks to haul away. This is the same thing. When I first saw it, I thought that was a big hole, but it's not. It's actually up. It's out of the ground.
Okay. Where are they hauling the dirt to? I'm just curious.
I'm not sure where they're hauling it to.
This stuff's
Contractors
valuable.
have many places. Not sure where this one's going, but a lot of it's heavy clay that's not really good for fill dirt because it's very expansive. That's why they get rid of it.
Okay.
Any other questions on Treasure Hills?
Will they be replacing that dirt with fill dirt, or do they have plenty of soil there to work with?
Yes, no, they bring in select fill, that's a lot of sandy loam that has very, very little expansion properties.
Okay.
And that's the preferred dirt that they use. And in the parking lots, they'll put lime in it and mix it with lime to lime stabilize it, makes it almost hard like concrete,
Yeah, they've
so it
always
doesn't
had
expand very
foundation
much.
problems. Yeah. Yeah, Treasure Hill's been known for foundation issues through the years.
Right, and that's why the buildings are being put on footings that they'll be drilling as well. The new wing is on big footings as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the Vernon World Languages Academy.
What's that?
The phase 3 was that courtyard, and again, I'll just show you the pictures with the pavers. They got landscaping, they already put the underground sprinkler system in. These red pipes here, there's a bench seat that goes on top that will finish those off.
Did we talk about those before?
And just another photo, it looks very nice. They painted the walls. We have accessibility, we have a fan that's going to cool the space. We have planters. There is one thing, and I'll show you a change order, is that right around this area, on this wall, every time we'd have heavy rains, a lot of the soil would just erode. It would start making a big hole. And so we asked them to do some investigative work to what was causing that, and it turns out there's a big line down there, storm drain line, that's broken. And so water would just go through there and leak out and take the soil with it. And then a lot of the water stays under the building. So they've defined what the problem is. And we got a proposed change order for about $8,500 to repair that brand new. We have about $13,000 left in contingency. So we're going to let them do that work and get rid of that problem once and for all. If not, we'll start having erosion and the pavers will start sinking with it. So we're going to take care of that problem as well. It was right around this, right below the beam here, which is right here. So once they do that, we'll be complete, and it's going to be a very nice space.
Oscar, is that an air conditioning unit there behind the wire?
This one is for one of the classrooms there.
Is that
I believe that-
the permanent protection, or is that just a temporary?
I believe it's permanent, but they're going to have some landscaping they put here that's going to grow up on it like a vine, and it'll
okay.
cover that.
Okay.
So it's like a screen wall.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hello, good evening. I was just wondering, and you're mentioning the issue right now. I was wondering, with what we've learned in recent flooding time, and thinking of Treasure Hills and how careful we're being, do we need to do anything at Vernon proactively? And I was thinking of Vernon and Dishman and Milam. Austin doesn't flood itself, but that street floods. I mean, I was going to wait and talk about it with the TRE, but on the money, but it is pertinent to what we're talking about on Vernon right now, since we flooded recently there.
Yeah, on the new courtyard, which is over on the other side where the cafeteria, it's part of the cafeteria exterior space, we did do some improvements there when we fixed it, and we installed some additional drain lines. And in this area, we also, you can see there's a big manhole, there's some drains around here, and that's why we want to fix that pipe so that the water flows out. The problem we have here necessarily isn't our problem, it's more of a city problem. When our line drains to the city lines and the city's so full, it kind of backs up. So we also install what we call a big check valve or backflow preventer to prevent a lot of the city water from coming back towards us. But if it's so full, then of course ours won't drain that well and we'll start having some backup. So we really need and I believe the city has made some improvements because the last few rains we've had heavy, it really hasn't flooded that much on Sunshine Strip. So the city is making some improvements.
Thank you very much. I think that's just something we're going to have to keep in mind as we go forward. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Move on to our other big project, which is the Early College High School project. This one's about 15% complete. This is a picture that we had on September 20th on the section that we poured the slab. They already started erecting the steel structure, and they were working on this area to pour, but of course the rains kind of slowed us down, but we're back on it, and then cutting the parking lot that we have here in this area, and there's a parking lot way on the other side of, off the screen to the left. But all this will be additional pours. Again, this is September 20th, so as of today, we have some new sections that they were forming and ready to pour with underground plumbing in place. And they also started the metal studs on the, so instead of waiting till all the slabs done and then to bring in the steel work, as the slabs are poured, they're starting with steel work going up. Another view of the two-story space. So they're starting to do some metal work, floor metal deck work as well. This was the other section they're getting ready to pour, and they've already poured it. So after this dries in about 3-4 days, they'll start bringing in the steel for this section. And this is when after they pour it, they were working it with the power trowels. And just a little video of how they do that. They do it early in the morning, and hopefully it's cool enough because if it gets too hot, it'll dry and take some of the moisture out, and it can develop more hairline cracks. So they try to be very cautious with when they pour and when they trowel it, and they got to keep water in it. And this is another parking lot on the other side. They're starting to cut. They've already done mixed in the lime. They'll start bringing in the caliche afterward. So that's where we are on this project.
Oscar, did they pour that just this past week?
Yes, the second pour was just done this past week.
Wow.
But they've already drilled all the footings and the entire site that now they're putting the slab on top that sits on top of the footings.
You don't want it real hot.
So I was just kind of taking you through the phase of how they went from the forming to the pour to the finish and the trowel. So any questions on that project? If not, we'll move on to the HCISD Transition Academy. This one also, they just poured a slab, a section of it, 10-3, which is what? You have 2 days, I think it was Saturday they poured it. And again, they're troweling that one. And then the exterior work, you get the broom finish on the sidewalks. This is a brick ledge that's left for the building and the anchor bolts for the wood frame that'll sit on top of that. And this was while they were forming it and putting all the steel, and this is after they poured it. I went by there this morning, and they put a little border around it, and they filled it up with water, again, to keep the moisture on the top surface so that it minimizes future spider web cracking or to protect the foundation a little bit more. So it's a good process. It's small enough slab to do that. And then the last sections will be the exterior front porch and the back porch and breezeway. Any questions on this project? We do have the groundbreaking next, what is it, Shane, Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
We'll have our groundbreaking here. Next project is the Gutierrez Fine Arts Academy. This project was by Spalglass. A lot of it had some interior work. And this is the new curtain wall that they put up.
Wow, that looks
Before
great.
it was just a metal grill, and you could
Super.
you could hear the sound from the cafeteria into the lobby, hallway area, into the office. This was the first one of the prototype that was built. So when we did Bella and then Memorial, the architects put a wall for noise protection and for better acoustics. So the wall is up, and we finished it before the kids got here. So it's working out really nice. And you can see the chairs and desks that were put in there with the shields. That's how the kids are going to be eating in there. Individual desks
That's fantastic.
with protective shields.
And Spalglass did that project, right?
Yes.
It really, really looks nice.
And all these chairs are put 6 feet from each other, so we have the social distancing requirements.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
So that looks great. It looks great. Everything looks really wonderful so far. I was wondering, I thought that our children, excuse me, I got the dogs up here. I thought that our children were going to be eating in their classrooms. So is that going to transition into this kind of environment in middle school and high school, or what?
A little of both.
That is correct, Mrs. Fleury.
Okay.
Some of our campuses are able to do breakfast in the classroom, but most of our elementaries have. But as we move into secondary, that's where we have moved into a cafeteria setting. We did away with the actual tables that we typically have in cafeterias because those really limited our space for accommodating 6-foot distancing. And so what we did in our cafeteria, since we had removed a lot of desks from the classrooms to create the 6-foot distancing, and they were actually taking up space across the campus, we knew we were going to have to do lunch in the classroom or in the cafeteria. And so instead, we went ahead and moved our desks in there, which actually gave us an opportunity to set more seating for students. But we went ahead and purchased these desk shields because our biggest concern with cafeterias, obviously, that's the one time when their masks are down. And so these face shields basically create a little space around the students so that that's a time when, even though their masks are down, they still have a little confined space to be able to do that. And actually, it's a bigger space than a classroom. Even a classroom sometimes can be confining. But actually, this has worked out really well for us. Our campuses are able to accommodate. And I think on some of these, it's actually even beyond 6 feet because of the size of the cafeterias. I think they have them at around 8 feet. I know Fernando Reyes, I think, is joining us. Even his campus, they were able, because of the size, to create even increased distance than the 6-foot distancing for students.
Thank you for explaining that. You know, we're all cognizant of Nolan's recent text that mealtime is dangerous time. And so we've really got to watch it. So thank you. It looks like that's a good precaution.
Oscar, I think it's kind of interesting, but Julio was just telling me that we ordered how many of these desktops?
We ordered about 1,600 for the teachers at the campuses, a little bit bigger size, and actually 4,000 of the student-sized desk shields. That was for phase one of the 30% of the kids coming back, and they were like about $20, a piece. So pretty reasonable. We did price them, and I think this was the best deal that we had.
And we may get reimbursed for some of those too.
We are trying to get some monies back from the federal government for the COVID-related expenses.
Great. All right. Will we be ordering more as we phase more?
Absolutely. We put another order of 6,000 for the second phase of the kids coming back in November. So that will give us probably about 10,000 overall desk shields for students. So we did order some more.
And then they'll be clean obviously several times a day, I'm sure,
Correct.
Yes.
sterilized, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we've also installed some large window frames in the robotics classroom so that you can see from one space to the other. And there's one of these also facing the hallway, so when you're going down the hallway, you can look into these rooms as well. And then we have the dance floor. It's already got the mirrors up. We have the Marley floor installed. It's a black one, and it's very soft. I walked on it the other day, and it's surprisingly very cushiony. So it'll work very good for our dancers. And that's it on phase 1. The next part we're going to do is phase 2. We've already consulted with the architect to do some work on an exterior learning space for the Science Academy portion. That will be the trim around the roof that's kind of faded. We're going to replace it new. And some screening around the chiller plant so that you can't see it from the street. And the architect already has some preliminary designs on that. So we'll be bidding that out probably sometime in December. The next part is the marquees. The weather and then of course the COVID hasn't helped. We're a little behind schedule, but we got the pack one in. And just so in case you haven't been by there, this is the kind of graphics it does.
Nice.
Looks great.
So we're very excited about this sign. It's very unique. It's only one of the, probably the best one we have in the district so far. But it's to show all the performing arts performances and upcoming events, and also a lot of marketing to be done on it. So we're excited about it. Gutierrez, we already drilled the footing and we got the pole up. We're just waiting for the sign, the manufacturer, the components for the LED boards and all that is coming from overseas, and they ran into some delays, supposedly COVID related, so we should get it in about 2 weeks, but we got the pole and the footing, so we'll put it up as soon as it gets here. And then over at Vernon, they're already drilling the hole for the pier on that one, and we'll get the metal pole up as well. And then the last one will be Zavala. And then South, Harlingen High School South is also getting one of these signs. So they'll all be within 2-3 weeks, hopefully they'll all be in. Contingency allowance, like I said, the Vernon Academy Phase 3, we had already a small change order to paint all those black areas that you saw painted were old windows boarded up. We painted them black, and it was about $1,000, and then that storm drain repair was $84.28. We still have about $5,500 left in that contingency, but that we don't expect any more changes coming up. So these will be the only two, and we always report any contingency allowances or change orders that we approve. And then in the board meeting next Tuesday, you'll see 3 agenda items to approve final payments. The multipurpose building Phase 3 that we did for Dishman, Houston, Stewart Place, and Rodriguez is complete. We had about 14,000 unused monies that'll come back to us, so the final payment will be 14,776. Vernon World Languages Phase 2, we have about 6,200 left, so the final payment after we get our credit back is 10,937.
Yeah, we could do it.
We will hold on to the check. We won't release it until that tree's planted. The tree's going to be planted here in October. We're in October, so I would think later this week or next week it'll be planted, and then that project will be finished. And then the last payment is air conditioning upgrades we did at Harlingen South. Final payment will be $36,918, so we can close that project out as well. So that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
No, Oscar, thank you very much. It's just amazing how everything is progressing so fast, particularly the early college high school. I mean, we were out there just for a groundbreaking the other day, and the framing's, really coming along fine, and the Transition Academy, it's just amazing what's going on. And again, thank you to you and your staff for doing such a great job. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Are you going to use this one, or are you going to do your own?
Yeah, actually, we can use that one. That looks pretty good. Oscar, you can leave it up.
Okay.
Mr. Powers?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Powers, Dr. Costos, committee members. Agenda item number 3 is the construction cost report through September 30th, 2020. As you can see on column 1, year 1 through 5 of the budget, we have $60 million that was budgeted year 1 through 5. In year 6, we have another $22 million, and that's, of course, the $10 million of the TRE plus another $8 million for early college high school and the $4 million that we're taking from our reserves for Treasure Hills. What we spent in year 1 through 5 was $54.2 million. What we spent in committee year 6, another $26.1 million, and total spending committed through, as of right now, is $80,401,000. So we have a balance of about $1.6 million left for this fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. And we're going to be using most of that.
We're going to use most of that. Did you hear that, Mr. Potter?
Yeah.
You got to answer any questions that committee members might have?
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, thank you, Julio. So we got money left over. It's nice to see we're always in the black at the end of at the end of your reports and not in the red. So thank you for keeping us solvent as always. All right, if there's nothing else, then this meeting is adjourned.
Hold it.
All right.
We have two people, Keisha and Colin.
Okay, we are live.
We're-
Dr. Reiniger, we're live.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Transforming Teaching and Learning Committee. We are very happy to have another meeting together. This meeting has been posted in accordance with guidance and is pursuant to Governor Abbott's temporary suspension of open meetings laws. This meeting will be conducted via audio-video conference and is viewable for the public. We are going to start today. We have a quorum, so we are ready to begin, and we're going to start today with Dr. Alicia Noyola, who's going to talk to us about Pathway to Reopening update. Thank you, Dr. Noyola.
Thank you, Dr. Reiniger. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So we titled it Pathway to Reopening Update because that's exactly what we're looking to do today, is just kind of give you an update on where we are. We have been on this pathway to reopening as far back as last March, where we were talking about after quarantine piece, we'll be back and opening our schools. Well, that didn't happen. And so ultimately our work was really about planning that next opportunity for reopening our schools to students. And so that we're at that point as of yesterday. Really great opportunity to see our students, see our teachers, get a taste for what we were missing these last 6 months since we first began dealing with this COVID situation. And so as we were dealing with our pathway and getting ready to reopen and dealing with this whole COVID crisis, Harlingen CISD made a commitment to our families, to our students, to our staff, that we would create a safe campus environment if and when that time happened that we opened our schools. Just as we were navigating this COVID pandemic, obviously that's still something that we are doing. And so that commitment hasn't wavered. One of the images that we tried to focus on was that while we were still working on health and safety, and that was going to be a consistent piece, we couldn't lose focus of the academics. That's the core of our business. And so in that commitment, we focused on promoting some of that risk reduction through really just a great culture of teaching, regardless of where that was happening, whether that was at home, whether that was at school, in the classroom, as well as promoting a healthy and safe learning environment. Those two pieces has been the core of the work that we have done as we've navigated this COVID pandemic, and we will continue to do so. And so that work is really, all of that planning is what led us to the transition plan that we implemented the first 4 weeks, and then now is guiding our work the 5th through 8 weeks of transition. As you will recall, the first grouping, which is on week 5, included a good portion of our students who we felt really were essential to getting them back at school. We talked a lot about our special needs students, our early childhood students at our elementaries, our 6th graders, at the high school, different programmings that we really needed to get back into the school system. And so really prioritizing and identifying where those focuses needed to be. So we will continue that transition week 6, 7, and 8. We will bring additional students actually back into our school systems. And actually what you'll see on the screen is that week 8 was as needed. We had focused on whether the need was going to exist for Treasure Hills Elementary. Fortunately, everything is moving forward, and Treasure Hills was able to bring back their pre-K to 2 students and their siblings this week. And everything seems to be set to go for us to bring back our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders next week. So there should not be a need for us to utilize that week 8 at this point to slow down this process. It was really interesting as I was visiting some of the campuses yesterday and visited some in the afternoon. And, you know, the general question when we weren't there in the morning and I visited schools and asked principals how'd it go, their general response was, you know, it was really smooth today. And so part of that is twofold. One is because of all the work and planning that went to get us prepared for this moment, but also in the fact that we slowly transitioned students back, gave campuses an opportunity to implement all their health and safety protocols with a smaller group of students. Even as of yesterday, I said, well, I think we're going to tweak this and tweak that. But it really, all that planning and then the actual implementation. When Dr. Cavazos talks about planning the work and then working the plan, we're working the plan. And fortunately, all of the things that we have implemented, I think have really worked in ensuring that we were ready to receive all our students and staying true to the commitment that we made to our families and students and staff. So I want to talk a little bit about that plan. So the plan really worked on, or was based on including preventative measures in everything that we were doing as we brought our students back. And so there were some general preventive measures that we focused on putting in place to ensure that safety for our students. And so some of these actually all of these you have heard along the way as we have been updating you. But these were all plans, and so obviously we have put those in place. One of the things that we focused on was communicating and messaging, and Shane, I've got to give a huge shout out to Shane and his department. They've just been phenomenal in the communication process to our families. Whether it was our Pathway to Reopening document that we put out, that was a 20-something page document that really was designed to provide everything in one place to our families where they can go and see what did the health and safety protocols look like? What are those things that I need to know as I transition my child back to the school, or putting easels out, or designing foot pads, or just a number of things that they have done. And so they've just been phenomenal in all the work that they have done to get us ready for returning our students back to schools. The second item was the personal protective equipment, and so obviously that's a key part of what we are doing. So that we provided masks to all of our students and staff. We provided face shields to all of our students and staff as well, just as added layers of protection for them to be able to operate in a safe environment. We do have some staff that needed additional protective equipment just by nature of the job that they do, whether that's in our life skills units or even in our lower grades. And so additional protective equipment has been provided to them. We did add desk shields to our campus, or to all of our classes, especially at the elementary level, just to create that extra level or extra barrier for them. And so those items have been put in place. I got to give an additional shout out here to really our board, our superintendent Julio Cavazos, in the stewardship of our funding and our monies in this district. And share it with you, I was speaking to a staff member whose husband works in another district, and he was sharing with her how blessed she was to be in HCISD. He was sharing what their situation looked like in his district, and the fact that masks were not provided. People had to provide their own. Same thing for staff, the desk shields, just all the things that we are blessed to be able to provide to our students and our staff, thanks to the stewardship of our board of trustees, Dr. Cavazos, and certainly Julio Cavazos, and all that he has done to guide that process. Sometimes we don't realize how blessed we are until we hear the experiences of others, and so just a huge thank you to all of you. As we talked about physical distancing, and so one of the focuses has been about keeping that 6 foot distance, and so we've made a lot of adjustments in our operation. You see a little shield, a little decal on the left-hand side. Those are all markers that we have put out there to guide our students. We have put plexiglass in every front office to ensure the safety of our staff as they interact with the community. Face masks are the signs for face mask coverings are out there. One-directional, one-way signs are out there just to help students navigate our hallways and make sure that we're we're keeping that distance happening throughout our campuses. Hygiene protocols, a lot of training of our students on appropriate hand washing. We've added additional hand washing stations, water bottle refill stations, all with the focus on hygiene. We have our families self-screening at home. If we have visitors coming to the school, they're having to do an actual screening. We have our QR codes on every campus doorway that anybody that enters has to scan and answer specific questions. We have temperature screenings happening at all of our campuses. We have isolation rooms or sick rooms where if the need ever exists for us to separate students, all of that has been put in place. You've heard about all the cleaning and disinfection, the timed cleanings that happen throughout the day. We bought those electrostatic sprayers that are being used throughout the campus to really facilitate that cleaning and disinfection. So a lot of really great pieces that have been put out there as general protective and preventative measures. When we talk about working the plan, they're actually in the process of working that plan now. Our transportation department had to implement different protocols on how they would handle students. So, they have their hand sanitizing stations, they have their protocols on how kids load and unload the buses. They have created their 6-foot distancing. Just as an FYI, the numbers on our buses were pretty consistent with the number of students that we had at 30%. So the number of students that we typically would get riding the bus is about 30% now from what they typically carry. And so that's allowed for us to be able to continue to keep the same safety measures in place as what we have at our campuses. Our campuses have adjusted their arrival and dismissal processes. Number of campuses have different places for drop off by specific grade levels. They have ways that kids are arriving to campus to ensure that they're keeping their 6-foot distancing. All of those things have been put in place by our campuses. Same thing in our offices. I mentioned the plexiglass. Transitioning between classes. At our elementaries, it's pretty much self-contained. Sometimes they do have to transition, whether it's going to music or to PE, but those are limited. Even at our secondaries where it was a little bit more difficult to look at keeping kids in classrooms, so they do have some transitions. But even then, our campuses have made adjustments. I saw Fernando Reyes was on in our meeting. Fernando, they had to figure out their ways of transitioning, and they really put a lot of thought around it. For example, at his campus, they actually build in about a 15-minute transition time between classes, not because kids are going to be out in the hallway for 15 minutes, but what they did at his particular campus is he is releasing kids by alpha. So he is, the first 5 minutes, they're releasing the students A through G from classes, and then they do the next set of alpha and the next set of alpha, so that when that child, the A through G student, leaves the class and goes to his next class, there's actually seats already available for that student. And so there's this movement, but it's still limited numbers in the hallways. And so everybody has made their adjustments to ensure that we are protecting our students even during transitions. We have managed our class sizes to really maximize that social distancing. And so those pieces are currently in place in all of our campuses. All the desks face in the same direction, so that we know that we're not creating that opportunity for students to be face to face. Our food and nutrition service, they have made their own adjustments. Every department has been impacted by COVID, and so everybody has had to play a role in how they protect our students. And our food and nutrition department is no different. Some schools are doing breakfast in the classroom. Others are doing grab and goes, where they pick up their breakfast and they go straight to their class. We continue to do curbside service. Our campuses are using outdoor areas as well to be able to give students an opportunity to be outdoors. We've all heard the importance or the role that outside plays, and so our campuses are taking advantage of that. Our playground and recess, we know that those times are important for kids. We recognize that. And so how do we do that and still keep them safe? And so, we've streamlined the playground equipment, but our PE teachers have been very creative about how do we give our students that opportunity to still go out to recess, but yet still having those health and safety protocols in place to protect them. We're still doing the emergency drills that are expected from the state. We're just doing them a little bit different. They're doing drills by one class at a time, and they do it over a little bit longer period of time. Some of those are mock drills, and so we're still compliant with the expectation of the state, but we're doing them within the purview of COVID. Our specials class at the elementary, our electives, they too have been focused on how do they still continue the work, but do it a little bit differently. And so things like sharing of materials has changed, cleaning in between and things of that nature are a little bit different, but they're still accomplishing what they need to accomplish for our students. Before and after school activities, when we talk about sporting events and visual and performing arts types of programmings, all of those programs had to develop a health and safety plan. And so their plan clearly outlines what will after school practices look like, down to the detail from when a student arrives to the time they leave. How do we handle locker rooms and things of that nature? In fact, I think we shared with you on the administrative report that all of our athletic programs and performing arts programs actually submitted what we call game day plans. So we know how to operate protocols during practice, but what does that look like during a game day? And so, just so proud of all the work that they did and thought that went into creating these plans. We feel very confident that as we start to host these events, that we have taken every precaution that we're able to take in the scope of the situation. And so we feel comfortable that we will be able to focus on keeping the health and safety of our students in mind as we start to move towards some of these activities. If you haven't had a chance to see on this slide, you'll see what the desk shields look like. This is actually, I think it's at Vela. So we actually set up desks in there instead of cafeteria tables. They were just much easier to navigate with having desks, but you'll see the desk shields. And so we recognize that lunchtime is one of those situations that's going to be a huge concern because the masks aren't on. And so as much as we would like to do classroom time for lunch, there's a lot of other pieces that get in the way, things like duty-free lunches for teachers that are a mandate from the state, and those things that we can't work around or can't change, but we certainly can make adjustments. And so one of the adjustments is exactly what you see here, where we created these desk shields for students so that they could still have their lunch, still have a degree of protection. It's a three-sided screen, and so during that time they eat, and then their mask comes back on, and then everything is cleaned in between lunches. And so while we have implemented all of these protocols, and we're very confident that we have tried to think of everything and are working that plan, unfortunately there is no guarantee that we will not have a case. And so one of the things that we planned out was, what will that process look like? And so what you have in front of you, and this is actually in our health and safety protocols document, you have 5 different situations that could happen, and then the processes that we would take to address those. So for example, on your left-hand side, it starts with a student who has tested positive for COVID-19. And what are those steps we're going to take? A parent reports that a student was experiencing symptoms at home. What does that look like? If a student is experiencing symptoms at school, what are our processes? If a parent confirms that a student had close contact with somebody that was lab confirmed positive, what are our protocols there? And then what will we do when a student or parent reports that someone has been in contact or in the home of someone with COVID? So we've worked through a process map that kind of guides that. And then we've also outlined what our campus measures will be when we have that? What is the actual role that the campus will play from when the campus is first notified all the way down through the contact tracing until we get to the point that we have to make a determination on what happens, what actions will we take? Is it just a matter of the student themselves being the one that is quarantined, or does that impact a classroom, a wing, or even the whole campus for a period of time? And so we've worked through these measures and have put them in place. Hopefully we won't have to, but in case something like that happens, we're confident that we have a system ready to go to address that situation. And so as we talk about potential school closures, we'll always be working with our local health department to assess those factors and help them guide us as well on to what degree will we need to do any type of closure. We have our protocols, but we always work in conjunction with our local health department, and so we'll work with them in making those kinds of determinations if and when they happen. Obviously, we recognize there are so many unique situations that we may encounter, and so working closely with our health department is going to be a critical part. So I want to talk a little bit about next steps, kind of giving you a lens of what is happening now in our schools now that we're putting that plan in place. But I want to talk a little bit about what's coming, because we won't be fully reopened until we reach that point when all of our students are back, and we don't know when that may be, but we know we're in that process. And so just to give you an idea on what's coming up here in the next few months, in a couple of weeks, we are going to give our families an opportunity to make a determination whether they want to change their pathway, whether they're wanting to go from face-to-face back to remote or remote to face-to-face. And so we are actually going to open up a small window of time, the 19th through the 21st, when parents can make that choice. If you will recall, the Commissioner of Education gave us some guidelines around parents choosing pathways. And so the Commissioner said that parents could have up until the 2 weeks before school started to make a determination, and then they could change at the end of every quarter or beginning of the next quarter. And so our quarter begins November 9th. So a few weeks before that, October 19th to the 21st, we're going to give our families that opportunity. It's a short window, but we'll let them know ahead of time that this time is coming. And so we have that big difference in time because we want to see what those numbers look like. If we have a large number of students and families wanting to return back to face-to-face, additional families, then we want to know what those numbers look like so that we can adjust accordingly. But another consideration that we want to keep in mind is that as we evaluate whether there's additional safety needs based on those numbers, we want to think about a new transition waiver that was recently made available by the Commissioner of Education. So if you will recall, for weeks 5 to 8, we went to the board and requested permission to submit a waiver to slowly transition students back. That's where we are right now. The Commissioner has added an additional waiver for technically weeks 9 through 12. And so no different, we would still have to get board approval to be able to do that. What we are thinking about is the possibility that depending on how many number or what that number is of students that are wanting to return to face-to-face, that we possibly consider using this additional waiver to slowly transition that group back, no different than what we did in weeks 5 to 8. Now, as opposed to the week 5 to 8 transition, where it was an automatic pretty much, once we submitted it to the state, they were going to approve that. This next opportunity for a transition waiver is not an automatic. We would have to request permission from the state, and they will make the decision on whether we will be able to implement this additional transition waiver. Although the state has said that they are giving special consideration to Region 1 and Region 3. Region 3 is over in the Victoria area. And so as we look at these numbers on October 19th through the 21st, that's really going to guide whether the need will exist for that transition waiver. Just wanted to make sure that you were aware, because even though that from the 19th through the 9th is about 3 weeks or so, there is a process that needs to happen if we decide to apply for that transition waiver. And so we wanted to make sure we had enough time to get all of those processes done. But we will know on the 21st really what those numbers look like and whether the need for an additional transition waiver will need to be considered as a request. And then no different when we talk about our teachers and our staff and continuing that training for them to navigate operationalizing face-to-face instruction and remote instruction simultaneously. I know Mrs. Corton is with us, and so her and Lori Romero and Joseph are having conversations around additional staff development that needs to happen for our staff and what adjustments and resources we need to provide to our teachers to be able to continue doing this work. The last thing that we want to do for our teachers is increase, obviously, the stress level that has happened with COVID. And so everything that we can do to facilitate them navigating this new instructional model, then that's what we're needing to do. And so we're working very much on getting that situated. And then just in closing, I want to share this Swedish proverb. It says, rough waters are truer tests of leadership. In calm water, every ship has a good captain. Well, we recognize right now is not calm water, but we have amazing captains on board in our district. I can't, every campus that we visit, we have true captains leading those campuses. We have the greatest captain sitting in our audience with Dr. Cavazos, who's been an amazing leader through this whole process, and certainly our Board of Trustees in guiding our district. Huge amount of leaders across our district that are doing everything they can to ensure that our students continue to be successful even in these times of rough water. So just a huge shout out to everybody across our district. It's amazing what we have been able to accomplish, amidst this pandemic and this crisis. So that is our update for today. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nayola. It's always refreshing to hear the latest strategies, and clearly the whole team just takes such a thoughtful approach to every piece of this. And so it was very good to hear the potential approach for the new waiver and how that might be used and the data that will drive that. So really appreciate that. Let me ask trustees, do you have any questions?
I have one question, please. Okay. First of all, I certainly do agree with Dr. Reininger. Alicia, I would like to commend all of you and all of our captains throughout the district for the extraordinary work and extraordinary leadership. I think again of my favorite, it's the set of the sail, not the force of the gale, that determines our destiny. And you all have certainly become living examples of that. All of you have. So thank you. I just would like to ask a follow-up to our earlier meeting. I really do love the shields that you've purchased, that we have purchased. That's just a great idea, particularly for the lunchrooms, which are going to have more students in them. And I did understand what you were saying about the progressive rollout of the classrooms in their movements. But I'm wondering if you could talk for just a second, please, and describe the protocol, because those cafeterias, again, are going to be where we have the largest number of people, I'm assuming, and as more students come back, that's where the large group is going to be. And so they're going to be protected while they're there, but, we all have in our minds the nightmare picture of one of the early schools that opened up in the southeastern United States, and the hallways were just packed. I know we're not going to do that, but I'm wondering how we're not going to do that. I mean, are we doing staggered lunchroom releases, or because I anticipate parents will ask me that question. So how are we going to do that? What's happening on that score?
And so whether it's transitioning between classes or even transitioning to the cafeteria. So an example like I shared is what Fernando Reyes is doing on his campus, where they are staggering dismissals, where they start with a small group, A through G, and that group goes and gets to their destination, and the next group comes in, and the next group, and they actually have built in about 15 minutes in between classes to be able to do this staggering. And so no different in the lunchroom. The same situation happens. And in fact, I'll expand a little bit more on how we're handling that cafeteria setting, because that was the area that was most concerning and that we spent the most time around planning. And so, and really when we talk about planning, it's also with the thought around contact tracing. Also, should the situation ever happen, how do we know where they were at, who they were around during that cafeteria time, and so forth. And so what they've actually done, aside from the desk shields, is students have assigned seating. And so when I go into the cafeteria, I'm always sitting in the same seat because I've been assigned that seat. And so that allows us that should we ever have a situation, we'll know exactly which students were exposed, and we can address that accordingly. We also, our students, when they arrive at the cafeteria, they're actually going to their seat first, and then they are being identified by rows and by groups to go and either get their lunch. Some have been able to accommodate having the lunch brought directly to that seat. But even when students are having to get up, there's actually markers on the floor all the way along to the road to getting to the cafeteria. We no longer have our students punching in their IDs or anything like that, so it's really a touchless process in the cafeteria. The meals have been changed to where now we're not unfortunately providing as many options for students because we really want to streamline that process. Sure. When our students are eating, we're really focusing on a 15-minute window for them to eat. So it sometimes means we're encouraging our kids, okay, let's keep eating. We're really focused on 15 minutes as our guide. They may be in the cafeteria for 30, but their focus is on trying to ensure that they're getting their eating done within a certain period of time. When they release cafeteria, it's very similar. It's staggered by groups so that we don't have huge numbers. We've also set up our outdoor areas. Those campuses that have outdoor areas have also been set up at 6-foot distancing for students with assigned seating as well, so that we're taking advantage of those outdoor courtyards and different layouts, so that we're also at least taking advantage of the fact that we have that opportunity. We know outdoors is always going to be preferable, but we have made sure that even in our cafeterias, just to be on the safe side, those campuses that have been able to accommodate, instead of a 6-foot distancing, they're actually using more like 8 feet distancing just to have a buffer and have a little bit more of a cushion. And so that cafeteria time was very strategic and very focused because we recognize that that's a vulnerable area. That can be a vulnerable area if we don't put really specific measures in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. We probably have time for one more question on this topic, and then we'll move to the next agenda item. Anybody else want to ask a question?
If I may?
Yes, sir, Dr. Muniz.
Okay, first of all, I want to go back to what you said about Shane and his team. Amazing job. I mean, my phone is blowing up now because I'm a parent, and it actually comes across as spam now, so that's a good job. You're doing a good job. So keep up the good work with that communication. It's hard to over-communicate, right? And you guys are doing it, text message, email. Are you guys doing text message? Email for sure, right? Voicemail. So great job. My question on the survey, on the algorithm that you had, when a student gets infected, why are we using 10 days instead of 14 days?
So you'll see 2 dates. You'll see a 10 and you'll see a 14. So the 10 is based on the guidelines that we've gotten, and we see it from CDC and TA. The 10 is for those students or whoever it may be that have been lab confirmed. And so on the lab confirmed, those are going into isolation for 10 days. And so in that, on that document, we talk a little bit about what does isolation mean versus quarantine. Now, somebody who maybe is showing symptoms, but they're not lab confirmed, or they've been possibly in close contact, those are the 14-day people. And so those are the two distinctions that you'll see in there, and that's really why you'll see the 10 and the 14 as numbers in the document.
Perfect, thank you.
Dr. Reiniger, real quick, just want to commend the staff for all their work. I had a chance to visit quite a few campuses, and some of the big takeaways are that at the high school, students were ready to follow the rules and the protocols that were set forth. The principals all had orientation meetings, and the communications department put out a video of here are the expectations, here's the protocols and so forth. But you'll, like anything that you plan, in some areas we may have over-prepared, and so we realized that maybe we were expecting things and it didn't come to fruition, so we changed our attention to something else. But we're still dealing with age appropriateness. And so to give you an example, I was over at Austin Elementary, and by the way, even though we're dealing with this pandemic, Austin and Sam Houston are being visited by the International Baccalaureate Program so that they can move from candidacy phase over to full implementation, and they're doing an incredible job. And we just got a great report from Austin Elementary. So we're still innovating even though we're navigating a pandemic. But there was a pre-K kid in the cafeteria, and they were socially distanced and so forth. He was wearing his shield and his mask, and so he took off his mask, and he still had his shield with the decorations. You know, Dr. Nuela went shopping, and so she put bears and what have you on the shields. But the kid had a roll, a piece of bread, and he was hitting the shield several times trying to eat it. And he would look at the teacher and said, I can't eat it. And so the teacher had to go over and from a distance say, okay, remove the shield. And so he started eating, but he doesn't know, right? And so, but it's incredible what the parents are doing and the students are doing to ensure their safety. And I have to give a big shout out to the teachers and the teacher assistants and of course the administration, but the teachers are doing an incredible job. And so they deserve big accolades from us, and they are doing a lot of heavy lifting, and so are our principals and our administration. So thank you for staying the course with us, and as board members, staying informed with the latest of what we're doing so that you too can answer questions. And so I appreciate it. I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Reiniger.
Well, we are so proud of everything that everyone's done, and we just can't thank the teachers and staff enough for the dedication, and Dr. Noyola, as you said from the beginning, the captains of the ship at each one of the campuses and in our main building. So thank you to all of you. And that really leads us right into our next discussion. We're going to have Ms. Veronica Cortan talk to us about Holdsworth and our journey and the leadership definition. And so we're, welcome to our guests. Thank you so much for being here, and we're really looking forward to this presentation as well. So Ms. Cortan?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Reininger, board members, Dr. Glasso, senior team, and audience. This afternoon, I'm going to share a little bit with you all about our leadership definition and our journey with Holdsworth. And yes, a huge thank you to Colin and Keisha, who we meet once a week. And let me tell you, they have been true champions in this process. So huge, huge shout out to them. So the objectives for today is that I'll go over a little bit of our Holdsworth journey, where we started and where we are today. I'll talk about our leadership definition and then review next steps with everybody. So I'm going to start here with our Holdsworth journey, because last summer we had the opportunity to visit Singapore, and that's where our Holdsworth journey took us. After being selected, we had the opportunity to go and visit in the fall of last year, visit some extraordinary organizations. One of those being Singapore, where we learned a lot about pipelines, and we learned a lot about structures to have people, to have avenues for people to move into different roles in Singapore. And we also went to Toronto, and when we were in Toronto, wonderful leaders there as well. They opened their doors and said, come on in and let's just learn from one another. And so while we were in Toronto, Joseph Yadiel is part of our Holdsworth leadership team. And so while we were there, we spoke a lot about principles and came back and really thought about how can that impact some of our work. And then who could not mention HEB when you talk about Holdsworth? And so we did have a chance to visit HEB. What a neat experience where we had the opportunity to truly learn about how they are preparing their next generation of leaders, but at every layer of the organization. And so with visiting those three wonderful organizations, we were able to come back to our district, and we embarked in November on the talent assessment. And so you may recall, it was almost a year ago, but you may recall that we worked with our board of trustees, and we worked with actually every single employee in our district. We worked with Holdsworth, pushed out a talent assessment. And so every employee in our district, along with our board members, were allowed to participate in our talent assessment. And so very, very happy to announce that we had over 1,400 employees who contributed to all of our results with the talent assessment. And as we move forward in the rest of the presentation, I'll talk a little bit more about the talent assessment and why it was so important. But one of the things that we were able to notice with our feedback is that we had great ideas of what leadership should look like and does look like. We were able to speak to wonderful leaders in our organization. But the one gap that surfaced with our talent assessment is that we didn't have a streamlined definition of leadership in Harlingen CISD. And so one of the things that we embarked on right away with the talent assessment is to do just that, is to work with our organization and define leadership in Harlingen. So starting in December, we had several focus groups. A huge thank you to Keisha for leading those. But she had several focus groups and individual conversations and looked at survey data. And all along the way, after every focus group, we would come back together with members of our senior team, and we would refine the process of defining great leadership in our district. And so on the screen there to the left, you see Mr. Reyes and Ms. Damez there. And in the background, you also see some of our senior team members. So one of the great things with looking at the leadership definition is that we created this collaboration between senior team members and principals. And we sat and really talked about leadership in our district. And so that was one of the first things that we did. And we went to our stakeholders and said, how do you define great leadership in our district? And so here we are, proud to announce and proud to share with you our experience leadership in HCISD. And so on the screen is a picture of our new leadership definition. And so we titled it Experience Leadership. And part of the reason that we went with experience leadership is because throughout all of the feedback and throughout all of our time in working with stakeholders, this whole concept of experience HCISD kept on surfacing. And so because that was a common theme, we thought how more appropriate could we be, right, than to name it experience leadership in HCISD. And then the other thing that you'll notice about our leadership definition is that there are two components. On the right-hand side, you see commitment to excellence. And on the left-hand side, you see a heart for people. Why? Because in Harlingen, we are data-driven and we continue to move towards excellence, understanding that you never truly arrive, but rather we have a community of continuous learners. And then absolutely heart for people. That's what we're about in Harlingen CISD, is ensuring that we continue to engage the heart. And so those are the two halves of our leadership definition. On the outer part of our circle, you see our 8 competencies. And so if we're going to have commitment to excellence, you see things like strategic thinking. You see things like innovation, results-driven, and adaptable. And so those are the 4 competencies that are aligned to commitment for excellence. And on the other side, you see that we develop self and others. If we're truly going to have a heart for people, we will start with ourselves and then develop others. We'll also be an effective communicator, collaborate with others, and at the end of the day, it's about building trusting relationships in our organization. So those are the competencies. And under each of those competencies, we also went further to define behaviors that we can share with you in one of our admin reports. And so as we look at experience leadership, the other thing that we have really come to appreciate with Holdsworth is that it's not just about designing the work and doing a lot of the pre-work. It's really about bringing things to life in your organization. And so with experience leadership, this will be the conduit to rethink talent management and to focus in a different way on goal 2. So what we are proposing today and what I'd like to share with you is that our leadership definition, it's time to bring it to life. It's time to bring it alive in every part of our organization. And what is that going to look like? In the immediate future, we will be looking at making experienced leadership part of our culture. Everything that we do in Harlingen CISD will somehow stem from that leadership definition. But the other thing that I'm really excited about is that tomorrow we will share a principal reflection tool with our principals, and we will prepare them for the work that we're going to be doing the following week. Our principal reflection tool is actually our TPES, which I believe you all are familiar with. That's our principal evaluation tool from the state. But not only are we going to roll out TPES, we have also been working with Keisha and Colin and Mrs. Romero and Mr. Villarreal to align our principal evaluation with the leadership definition. And so I really think that's going to be a great value for our principals. The other thing that we're going to be looking to Dahlia Garcia and Debbie Scoggin with is that we're going to be working in tandem with Keisha and Colin. And it's time to build a talent management system, something that will be, no doubt, will be very powerful in our system. What a talent management system will do is that it will allow us to look at longitudinal data on all of our vacancies in leadership areas, and it will help us to create projections of vacancies. And with those projections, then the other layer is, if you look at the next bullet there, is looking at MIT. And so with the talent management system, we'll be able to project vacancies. But the other part of that is that we also have to prepare our system to have the bench ready to jump into those vacancies that we have projected. The other big thing, looking at our leadership definition, is that we have already started working on the teacher incentive allotment. If we're truly going to have teacher leaders and give them every opportunity available, teacher incentive allotment will certainly be a big part of the work that we embark on this year. And then finally, looking at talent acquisition. You all are very familiar with our process with talent acquisition, and you also know that we looked at interview questions and really kind of rethought what our interview questions should look like. And we also looked at rubrics. So because we have a leadership definition, we are now able to look at interview questions and identify which competencies are going to be the focus in that interview process. I will tell you that we did a soft launch with some of the interviews that we have had here recently, and in working in conjunction with Mrs. Romero and Mr. Villarreal, we were able to create questions that aligned directly to our leadership definition competencies. And so that was really, really helpful as we made our way through these last few rounds of interviews. And so I have hopefully had enough time to share the journey with you. It indeed has been an honor to be part of Holdsworth. And as Keisha and Colin sit there in the background very quietly, I do have to say that they have been champions throughout all of this. Not only do they support us with everything that we do, but they very much have embedded themselves in our culture. And so whenever we have done things such as create the leadership definition, they're right there with us, but they know the culture, they know the people, and that has made all the difference in the world with some of our outcomes. And so with that, Dr. Reininger, I will open it up to questions and discussion from our board.
Great, thank you so much. And it really is just very exciting to see a framework, a model, a definition, but then see it come to life through actions and the pulling the threads through to make it real, right? To make it usable. So it's theoretical, but it's also practical. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sure we have some questions. Anybody want to start?
Dr. Reiniger, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Dr. Perez.
So first of all, very, very impressed with what you all came up with, Veronica. This is pretty amazing. I love it. It makes sense and it really resonates well. I mean, I think you can probably add words like growth mindset to that whole thing and service and compassion and other things. It's just very, very well done. I'm curious though, in the different, I don't know what you call activities or the way you're revamping the whole talent management sort of piece you're talking about on the other slide. I'm curious as to where in that framework do you feel the organization, because we've talked about this before at the board meetings, that, strong organizations, basically identify, cultivate, and create, the next leaders, right? And where in that do you feel that that's going to happen to where, because I don't think that we want a situation where people always have to self-select. Okay, I want to apply for this. I want to be a leader. I want to be in this MIT program. I feel that I can take the next steps and do this. I feel that the organization itself already has leaders that should also be keeping an eye out of, whoa, that one over there, she's awesome. That new teacher over there, he's awesome. And because sometimes, let's be honest, a lot of folks are not going to self-select. They're just not. However, they have all the tools, they have all the right things, the heart, the mind, the grit, they just have all the ability. If you just help identify them and give them a nudge and say, hey, you ought to think about doing this, but for that, they probably would never step up. So where in that do you feel that the leaders are going to do their part in identifying the next leaders? Is that a fair question?
It is, and so interesting that you asked that question, because as you know, Fernando spent some time with Dr. Cavazos today. And so part of his day included...
Please, let's not advertise his growth plan. That's not necessary.
So in that conversation, it was great to have Fernando actually with us, because what we looked at and what we shared with him today is actually our plan for HLC. So this week we're gonna prepare for that, but next week we are going to really, when I say bring the leadership definition to life, this is how. Every month at our Harlingen Learning Community meetings, we will bring forward a competency. This month it's actually 2, because the fall is we're gonna have a focus on one part of the leadership definition. But every month we will do a deep dive with all of the different layers of the organization on what the behaviors are for each of the competencies. And the other part of that, so I do think that we're going to be able to educate the system very well. The other part of that Mr. Reyes gave us great feedback on today is that part of the process when we bring it to life is going back to your question. We will have a process by which our principals and other people in the organization can nominate people that they believe exemplify those behaviors. And the reason we're doing that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about principals. So if we have a principal that their colleagues say that individual is the model of innovation, then as we are going through the process, it's about bringing to the forefront those nominations and pinpointing and letting that principal know, let me tell you what your behaviors look like on the other end, because you have inspired people with this competency. And in doing that, we also start identifying people that can help to teach that type of competency in the organization. Now, while I'm talking about principals, the hope would be that they would take that same type of system or something the equivalent, so that we can identify great people that will not come forward. Because I agree with you. Some people are just going to be quiet leaders, and they're not going to come in and take those opportunities. But if somebody taps them on the shoulder because they say, let me share with you our leadership definition, let me share these competencies. These are the behaviors that you're exemplifying, and I believe you're ready. I think that is going to be a lot more powerful than people just self-selecting. And so to answer your question, a big part of that is going to be to educate the organization on what great leadership looks like in our district and what we're looking for in the next generation of perhaps central office people or principals or any of those leaders. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Do we have another question?
If I can make a comment.
Very good. Dr. Moniz?
I have to. I love this stuff, right? First of all, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Keisha. I think simply the fact that you guys are coaching and being part of the system allows us to focus on these things that we need to be focusing on. And it's awesome. I mean, clearly the results are just beautiful. And to see that, what I like to frame it, the way I saw it was as a compass, right? It's really not a definition, it's a compass, because you're using it to direct ourselves, into picking the right people. With a compass, you get lost sometimes, but you get back on track, right? And so it's really nice to see that you have those fundamental definitions or words that are encompassing, very encompassing of what a leader is. It's great to be able to have that so that we can stay on track, hire the best. And, that's just going to make it a little bit tougher for people to get into the program, right? It's part of the process. We want the right people for the right seats. And having a system that allows us to do that is fantastic. So thank you both so much for your help. And Veronica, thank you so much for presenting it. It was great.
Very good. Well, thank you all for the comments.
May I ask a question, please? I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, there you were. You jumped off my screen. Sorry. Yes, Mrs. Fleury.
Am I back on?
There you are.
There you are.
There you are. Thank you. It was interesting because when I was not on your screen, I was on the whole screen of mine, so I couldn't tell. So I wanted to, two things. Number one, I certainly would like to join in congratulating our district, and the excitement is just palpable. It's just an incredible journey that we're on with Holdsworth, and I just am. I love the specificity. We're really getting down now to how we're going to work this plan, and we're really understanding the difference it is going to make. So kudos. I'm all in. And I say that because I do have a caveat question, and this really is a question. So we're talking about developing leadership on so many different levels, and of course that's the way to do it, is to develop leadership on so many levels. But we have to remember that I'm an old first grade teacher, and I would still go to the wall to say that the leadership within the classroom is equally important to any other leadership we are developing throughout the system. Even acknowledging the research of how important the principal is, and that may be the key component. I still know that what happens in the classroom is what is going to change that child's life. And so I'm wondering, within our Holdsworth structure, and the answer may be no, and that's okay, because we can get to it another way, but I'm wondering, within the Holdsworth structure, when do we talk about classroom leadership, because that is where the rubber meets the road. And so I'm wondering about that. Is that a component of our Holdsworth journey, our 5-year journey, or is that something that we need to work on developing separately? Because I do think it's critical. So that's my question. And kudos, I'm excited about what we're doing.
Jerry, I think if I would just ask Dr. Colasos to answer that question, please.
Yeah. So Jerry, I think that the leadership definition is for all parts of the organization, because leaders are in all parts of the organization, and to your point, it's also in the classroom. And with the teacher incentive allotment, we would like for the leaders and teacher leaders to remain in the classroom if that's what they choose and that's their path. but pay them accordingly. And that's the whole intent with the teacher incentive allotment, is to make certain that we're identifying those individuals early on. However, one of the things that I think is important in this journey, and I've been working with our board president, is to really have a conversation, and it's going to be our Team of 8 training, is really understanding the leadership definition and how it's going to be a conduit to how we do talent management in all parts of the organization, not just in the principal chair, in the assistant principal chair, in the instructional coach chair, in the counselor chair, but in all parts of the organization. Because to Dr. Perez's point, there are leaders among us that they are most effective in the positions that they are in. However, if they choose to be in other parts of the organization, we want them not to be at a deficit, but to be at a growth, to use the term growth mindset. We want them to be ready to take on the next position if that's what they choose. Now, we just touched the surface of what a leadership definition can do to an organization, because what we didn't illuminate were the behaviors associated with each one of the competencies. And it's in the behaviors that the conversations can take place, and we can really identify those people who are modeling those behaviors, who exhibit some of those behaviors. And Dr. Muniz talked about it being a compass. We also see it as a circle, because it's a continuous evolution of their leadership. And so you're always learning, and you're always sitting among those competencies. But to your question, leaders, this leadership definition is designed to lift all parts of the organization, not just at the administrative part, but also at the teacher level, the teacher assistant level, and all parts of the organization. And so the Team of 8 training is going to illuminate that, because we want to make certain, just like the strategic plan was the anchor and the permission to change and to innovate the system, the leadership definition is going to be the reason why we do things differently. And we're not going to leave leadership to chance anymore. It's going to be clearly identified. Here's what we're looking for, so that the system is sustainable and we don't lose traction every time a leader leaves, whether from the classroom or from the assistant principal chair or from the principal chair. And so it's really designed. And look, Dr. Perez said, well, when will we get to the point where we're tapping people's shoulder and saying, hey, you may be a leader and so forth? I think that's already happened organically. However, it's not happening as a system, because there's got to be a depth of understanding about the leadership definition. People need to understand this is what strategic thinking means in the leadership definition, and not leave it to chance. And so there's still a lot of work that's going to be rolled out this year, and Keisha and Colin are still part of our partnership and so forth, and we want them to be. But there's still a lot of work before we can change the culture where the leadership definition is going to drive the work, and it's really going to define our trajectory here on out. So hope that helps.
Dr. Cavazos, that's an excellent answer. Could I ask also, would it be fair to ask Keisha and Colin to comment, when they're in their district, when they're having conversations in the with district folks, I mean, how often are those conversations, because I think Jerry's question is excellent, how often are those are there conversations with leaders in the campuses or throughout the district? How often are those conversations about classroom type of activities and about teachers and things like that? I'm just kind of curious, because at the end of the day, Jerry's right. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road for results. I mean, we want to inspire every kid, and that's what we're doing it. But, Holsworth, has a different approach to get to that endpoint. I'm just curious as to y'all's take on what Dr. Cavazos said, and maybe how often those conversations are about what's happening in the classrooms.
So I'll let Keisha jump in if she has a comment, but I think my answer would be that we do encourage, and I think we see often in other districts, the same conversation about what does it look like to lead inside the classroom. I think, one, though, there are a lot of things that we try to stay out of the district's business, and we try to let folks like Dr. Galazos and the rest of the people on this team make their own decisions about the direction of the leadership in the district. I think one thing that is pretty consistent with our philosophy about leadership in schools is that...
Colin.
Oh, really? Sorry, I'll try to speak up a bit. Can you
Yes.
Okay. Is that, we try to push towards a distributed leadership model, which means that though the principal and assistant principals are certainly the formal leaders in the school, and that is their entire job, that's what they spend the entire day doing, that including more teachers, teacher leaders, teachers assistants, other folks in the business of leading the school and having greater responsibility and greater voice is, over the long term, much better for the school to increase that voice. And so I would say, to what Dr. Cavazos said, that is the general direction that Harlingen is going, but also that Holdsworth encourages districts to go in.
Yeah, Colin, and the other thing that I would add is to complement the work that's happening at the system level, the district level, we also have the Campus Leaders Program, which really tries to drive some of those outcomes at the campus level. And I know this year, I think you guys selected 2 campuses to go through, maybe 4, I can't remember how many you guys selected this year, sorry, to go through that program for 2 years to really help strengthen the leadership of those at the campus level and to work on a problem of practice that specifically focuses on student needs and student outcomes. And so we do try as an organization to kind of tackle that at the school level, but our main work with Colin and I is to really how do we put those systems in place to help enable some of that strong leadership to flourish at the campus level.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let me thank everybody one more time for that topic. Dr. Cavazos, so I'm going to pitch it back to you to give us just some comments about future meetings.
Sure, and so next month, the November 3rd, I think it is, that's election day. We are not going to have, we're planning not to have a facility committee meeting, but start at 4 o'clock with a Transforming Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. It'll be a one-topic meeting. We need to have the conversation around the advanced placement outcomes, how the kids did this past year. We do that on annual report, but we also want to talk about IB and where we are with the IB program. And then we would like to jump right into, at 4:30, into a Team of 8 training, which is a required training for the board. And it is going to be Holdsworth that actually hosts that training. And we're going to do a deeper dive into the leadership definition and how it can change our path moving forward. And so I'm going to do, I think I've talked to most of you on your availability, but would really like to nail down that Team of 8 training at 4:30 on November 3rd. It's about a 2.5, 3-hour training, and we'll get through that, and then you all can go back and see the election results. Okay, so Dr. Reiniger, back to you.
Back and forth. Well, that concludes our meeting unless there's any other comments. Again, thank you so much. And, it's always a pleasure to see how HCISD is transforming teaching and learning. Wish everybody a great night. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.